Hello, everybody. My name is Deborah Lewis, and I'm the owner of the Jane Schaefer Writing Program. I've been a Texas teacher since 1989. It's been quite some time, and I've been through 5 tests. Uh, First started out with the tabs, and then the teams, and then the toss, and then the tax, and now the STAAR. And so my philosophy is that tests come and go, but good writing is just good writing. And so the reason why I wanted to be with you today and make this complimentary for my Texas friends, since I'm a Texas teacher as well, is that I decided that there are ways to help the students perform on the STAAR. And I wanted to give you some techniques and some strategies that you might want to implement in the classroom. Hopefully, that'll make it easier for you because I'm all about teachers and making it easier then for your students to be successful. My biggest concern is students who feel that they can't perform, that they just shut down, that they don't want to even start writing because they don't know how to start, they don't know what to do. And because it's January, about to become February, it's test time. It's coming, and there's a lot of pressure on teachers. And trust me, I felt it for many years. So I know what you're going through, and I just want to see what we can do about helping your kids feel like they can succeed. And so when I teach districts, and some of you are, for example, at Fort Worth ISD, and we've got trainings coming up, and this next series of trainings will be starting in the next week. We're going to teach you the program, and then at the end of the training, we'll also show you the abbreviated version for the test. And so I'm going to teach you work with the abbreviated version of the test because we only have an hour together, whereas in the actual trainings, we have quite a bit more than that. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen with you. And what you're seeing here is the grade 6 2024 non-literary passage called The Age of Language. So if you want to take a note, this is 2024 Age of Language. And if you have access to it, that would be fine. If you don't, not to worry. Now that people are in, let me just put a copy of it in the chat for you. So it should be there now. And what I want you to do is I'm going to go through this with you, and you don't have to print it out. Don't worry about it. Your job is to just go ahead and look at the process I'm going through. All right. And I'm going to read through it so that you can see it. But unless you have a printer just handy, don't worry about it. I didn't know who would show up, so I wanted to wait and put it on the chat. So this is called The Age of Language. And if you've been trained in the Jane Schaefer Writing Program, then you know that we use different colored pens. And so I have my red, black, green, and blue pen handy. And the first thing that I like to teach the teachers is that when the students get the test, and we of course know it's online, that we have the students actually go to the ECR, or the extended constructed response on the test, and read the prompt before they actually read the multiple choice. This is an old advanced placement trick that works so well, and that is that when you are about to give a test and when you're teaching students the test format, and I was a teacher of advanced placement for many years also, and just a serious test, as you know, and I was preparing the students for that test, I would say to the students, what you want to do before you do anything is to skim the questions and skim the prompt, right? And so you want them to go immediately to the last tab. That's been where the ECR has been. So to go to the last tab, of course, you know, the minute I say that, they'll change it, but go to the last tab and look at the ECR and see what the prompt is. And you want to do that, and this is what I say to the kids, you want to do that because that prompt is giving you some insight into the passage you're going to read. The other thing is to read the SCR because it'll identify what you are supposed to be looking for as you read. And then go ahead and just scan. You don't have to take any time, but just skim or scan the actual multiple choice questions so that you'll be able to know, I mean, in your subconscious, this is what I say to the students is that in your subconscious, you'll recognize some of the questions as you're reading. So that's really important. And you don't take any time with that. I tell the kids, you know, just I'm talking about 3 to 5 minutes at the most. It just kind of settles you down. You kind of know what the questions are going to be. You know what the prompts are going to be, and then you're going to start reading. The other thing that I would have my students do is I would have my students ask for 3 to 5 sheets of paper. Ask for 3 to 5 sheets of notebook paper. And here's why. I'm not a big fan of the online tools with elementary, middle, or high school students. It's one other distraction for them. And it can be confusing and chaotic. And if they're taking notes online and they forget to save them and go to the next tab, they lose their notes. And, you know, even though it has an orange highlighter, it has different colored highlighters, it's still important for them to be able to pre-write. It's just like solving a math problem. You need to write down how to solve this equation. And so we're solving an equation when we pre-write. And so I say to the kids, so pretend that you have 2 screens, that one screen is the one where the test is located, and that's where you're going to write your final draft. And pretend that your other screen is a white screen with these pieces of paper, and that you're going to pre-write on your second screen, which is the paper, and then you're going to transfer what you write onto the test screen. And so when we go to the prompt, for example, the first thing we see is going to be the prompt here. And it says, what is the most likely reason the author wrote the selection? That's the prompt. We haven't read the prompt. I mean, we haven't read the passage. We're just looking at the prompt. What is the most likely reason the author wrote the selection? That's the prompt. Okay. So what I teach the students to do is to get a sheet of paper, and I'm recording this, so if you'd like to see this afterward, just email me. I'll put my email in. As a matter of fact, my assistant's on, and Vanessa can chat my email to you. And so I get a blank sheet of paper, and I'm going to come out a little bit so you can see what I do with this. And I'll say to the students, at the bottom of the paper, fold the paper up 2 inches. And so we fold the paper up 2 inches. And I know Alma sent you a reminder and asking you to bring blank pages, so I'm hoping that you did that. And then at the top of the page, come down 2 inches. Fold 2 inches. So you fold up 2 inches and then you fold down 2 inches. And you can do this a couple of times if you want to, one for the SCR and one for the ECR. So it works the same way. Now, after you fold up 2 inches and down 2 inches, then you take the bottom and you meet the top and you fold it one more time. Like that. And so it looks like this. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready, for those of you who are doing it. Okay, cool. All right, so now we open it up and we have our pre-writing sheet. And so I train the students, and I'd start in February to do this, because what you want them to do is practice this so that when they sit down, they ask for the paper and then they do the folding of it, right? And so I tell them, go ahead and draw a line. I've got my black pen, and we found out that the students may use different colored pens on the test if you want them to, or if they want to. And I go ahead and draw a line where the 4 creases are. And then at the top, I'm going to write Q, and that means question. And then I'm going to skip down, because if the question's long, I need to have enough room to write it. And then I'm going to write answer. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to draw a line under here and another line. And this is going to be, I pick up my blue pen for my Jane Schaefer aficionados, and I write topic sentence TS number 1. For topic sentence. And then I make a T-chart out of what's left. And these are going to be my CDs in red. And these are going to be my CMs in green. And then I'm going to teach my students that I really would like for you to have a center line. We usually use a cloud here, but it's easier on the test to just have a line. Center line, I've got my green pen. Center line, and then I want you to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because the more I write here, the better I'm going to like it. So a middle line, and then two on two at the top, two on in the middle, two at the bottom. And they'll get really fast at this. And then we're going to just repeat it. We're going to draw a line and another line, and we make that into a T-chart. This is going to be TS number 2, but notice how I come out a little bit further for my TS number 2. That's because I'm going to write another T right here, and I'm going to circle it, and I'm going to tell my students, now this needs to be a transitional topic sentence. And then I have my CDs and my CMs. And then I draw my lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And down at the bottom, for my ECR, I'm going to write big ideas. And that's in black. And I'm going to draw 3 bullets. And that's the pre-writing sheet. Now, if I have a SCR, I'm just going to be answering this part. If I have an ECR, I'm going to answer all of it. So if I have the SCR, I can take another sheet of paper and just draw this top part. That way they're not learning how to draw different things. You know, it's just one kind of format, and we just practice, practice, practice. So this is what I do with my students. I would say, okay, what I want you to do is I'm going to put you on a timer, and I want you to draw. What are you going to draw if you get an SCR? And they're going to have the blank paper, and they're going to fold it. And I would have them just fold it the same way. I wouldn't mess around with folding it differently. Just have them fold it the same way. And then they're going to turn this part in. And then you would practice with an ECR. And they practice, practice, practice. And what happens is they get so familiar with it that it feels fine for them. I mean, it's no big deal. Then what I'm going to do, and I'm looking at the extended, the short constructed response, but I can also make it into an ECR just to kind of show you. I'm going to pretend it's an ECR, but we can do it. It's the short constructed response here. And it says, what is the most likely reason the author wrote the selection? That's the prompt. And so up here, I'm going to write the question. And the question, I've got my black pen, and I'm going to write in the question, what is the most likely reason the author wrote the selection? This is the grade 6, 2024 SCR question. And then what I'm going to teach what I've taught my students is that if it is a what question, there are different kinds of questions. I'm going to grab another sheet of paper and write these notes. There are different kinds of questions. There is what I would call a what or a which question. So if the prompt is asking what or which, then the answer is going to have in it typically, not all the time, but is, are, was, were. If it's a why question, the answer is going to have because. And if it's a how question, the answer is going to have in it by or through. So when we ask, what is the most likely reason the author wrote the selection? What we're going to do is going to do what we call flip the prompt, and we're going to write the most likely reason the author wrote. And what I would do is, instead of saying the selection, I would tell my students, go ahead and put the title in here. So if it says the selection, then why don't you go ahead and put the title in here? And remember that a title of an article is in quotation marks. And this is called the age of language. In quotation. And because this is a what question, and it's about just one selection, it's going to, the answer is going to have is in it. If it said the most likely reasons, if there were an S in this word, then the answer would have are. Or, I mean, different kids might write in the past tense, and that's fine too. When you're writing about literature, when you're analyzing literature or pieces like this, the grammar rule is that you write in the present tense. But middle school students, that's not a battle we need to fight. They can write in the present or the past. It's called the literary present tense, but that's not a battle we fight in middle school. We fight that battle in high school. Then we're going to go to the passage. Now, you can't write on the passage on the test, but as we practice, the practicing of this, we are going to write on it. For January, February, March, we're going to write, and then on the actual passage, I'm going to make copies of it and give it to the students, and we're going to read and annotate the passage because I want them to get used to summarizing the sections. One of the challenges that we face with our students, especially our EB students, is that we don't know if they know what they're reading. We don't even know if they know what is being said in here. And the way to find out if they understand what's being said, and you'll learn really quickly, is to have them summarize the paragraphs. What did that say? And we follow the gradual release of responsibility. So I would model it. I would model this whole passage, or I'd at least model 80% of it, and then maybe have the students get in pairs and summarize one. Now on the test, I'll show you how I do it on the test in just a second. So as we read this, I'm going to read this. In a tiny Chinese restaurant, the menu on the wall includes some Chinese characters. At one table, a family speaks Spanish. At another table, the waiter taps his foot along to an internationally popular French song. This kind of scene is common in some parts of America. After all, the United States has been called a nation of immigrants. While English may be the language used most commonly in school, the truth is that many Americans are bilingual. This means that they can communicate in two languages. Now, I always tell my students, you should have the question always right in front of you. What is the most likely reason the author wrote the selection? Remember, that's your question. And when I read this, what's important is what is the most important thing that pops out of here? And that is that many Americans are bilingual. That's the purpose of this first paragraph. And so I'm going to have them write over here, many Americans are bilingual. When I'm teaching this the first time, they have to summarize it over here. They have to take this whole thing and summarize it. Sometimes it can be summarized by something that's in the passage. Other times they have to deduce what the paragraph said. If they're going to use this in their piece, I would have them put quotation marks around it so that they'll embed quotations as they are reading it. Because on the test, you want them to use quotation marks. You do not want them to paraphrase. And the reason why you do not want them to paraphrase on the test is because even though AI is intuitive, you want to make sure that there's no doubt that they quoted from the passage, that there is concrete detail, embedded quotations, and life is good. On the test, what I would do is I would have them pull up another sheet of paper, have another sheet of paper, and when I teach teachers on tests, like in California, for example, the sixth graders have 4 sources they have to synthesize, 3 to 4 sources they have to synthesize for their test. And so I would have them put source 1, source 2, etc. But since there's only one passage, if there's a paired passage, I would put source 2. Okay? So I would draw a line down the middle and put source 1 and source 2 if it's a paired passage. Does that make sense? Thumbs up? That makes sense? So here, under source 1, they're not going to be able to write on the passage, but I would have them put a bullet here, and I would have them write, many Americans are bilingual. And that was a direct quote from the piece. And then when I go to the second paragraph, even for those who did not grow up speaking multiple languages, learning a second language is powerful. So I'm going to teach my students that typically a topic sentence is important. And that's why I teach them topic sentences. So that's important. When I tell the students, try to underline less than or equal to 5 words in a row. So I take a grade on their ability to underline less than 5 words in a row. So maybe I don't underline is, right? Maybe I don't underline a. I'm going to teach them how to underline the words that pop. It helps people communicate with others from different countries. It also helps people improve their memory and problem-solving skills, according to several research studies. So right off of there, those 2 sentences, I'm going to have them underline communicate with different countries, improve memory, and problem-solving skills. So I'm going to teach them how to be very discerning of what they underline. Since scientists suggest that language learning is easiest for young children, learning a second language at a younger age seems like a great place to start. Well, when you have this right here in 2 paragraphs, and now we have a section title, then this is the introduction. And so typically I'm going to say to my students, look at your introduction. A lot of times the controlling idea, central idea, their thesis, I've got my black pen, is right here. This is the thesis, or the controlling, what the STAAR calls in middle school, the controlling idea. In elementary, they call it the central idea. So I'm teaching them how to read like a scholar. The brain of a baby is built to learn languages. Now, if I can have them underline this, but remember, on the test, let me just go back a little bit. The things that what I want to pull from this that is really, really important is I think what I need to do is I need to write, improve memory. That to me is important. Improve memory, improve problem solving. I'm going to teach them how to do this. And then, that younger age. That's what's important. That's the important things that came out of here. And then when we get to the brain of a baby is built to learn languages. So the brain built to learn languages. As toddlers, humans take in words and remember the way they are accented even before they speak. Accents, okay, I'm talking to my kids right now. Students, when you see the repetition of a word, that means it's important. We're talking about accents here. Accents are different pronunciations of the same words, such as saying here instead of here. And of course, I'd have to talk to my students about, in Maine, they say here, and in Texas, they say here. People who learn words in a second language often carry over accents from the original language they grew up hearing. So I'm going to say to my students, now, did you understand that? Because the first time you read something, sometimes you don't understand it. And I say that to my students. Now let's read that again. People who learn words in a second language often carry over accents from the original language they grew up hearing. So they often carry over, right, accents from original language. That's the gist of this paragraph. This can dramatically change the sound of words, potentially creating challenges between speaker and listener. So here, I'm just going to write accents can be carried over from original language. That's what I get from that, right? The ability to form accents is easiest for young kids. In a 1975 study, children ages 6 through 15 learning English as a second language were given a speaking test. The younger children scored highest in the ability to correctly form a particular accent. So it's easier, right? The ability to form accents easier for younger kids. There's your topic sentence. That's what this whole paragraph is about. That's why when you write a topic sentence, I'm talking to my students, when you write a topic sentence in blue, remember it should be what your whole paragraph is about. Learning a new language at a young age may help adults avoid the confusion that can arise from different accents. So here again, we hear it again about this younger children, can learn accents more easily. That's what this is about. But can young kids understand? There are some experts, however, that argue maturity is more important to the learning process than age. So this is maturity versus age. Professor Source of the Bilingualism Matters Center claims young children are not as prepared as older learners for studying in a classroom. Still, a sense of teamwork and excitement can drive kids at any age to success. So this is just about maturity versus age. And my students don't know how to do this until I teach them how to do this. So don't think that students know how to do this. They don't. That's why you're their teacher, and that's how you're going to show them to be successful. This is how scholars work through a piece. Now we're on continuing to learn. Children can use different methods to learn. Younger kids may not understand relationships between countries, but their desire to communicate can be increased by a single person instead. So what is this about single person? Because that's the first sentence, right? A second sentence. So this is about different methods, right? If the question, one of the questions were, what are the different methods, right? Then we're getting ready to get the different methods, and this might help also on the multiple choice. For example, they can build a friendship through exchanging letters with a real person from a different country in a pen pal project. So one method is becoming friends in a pen pal project. So this is pen pal friendship, right? And these are different methods, right? So this is one method. Another method, see, there's another method. So there's 1, 2. We're giving different methods. I'm teaching them how to lay out and read this. Another method, lay out their outlining and thinking. Immersion imitates the experience of a person moving to a new country. Studies show that foreign students who were put in an all English speaking environment learned English as a second language quickly. So if it's an all English speaking environment, they learn, right? They learn English quickly. Students in an immersion program find themselves surrounded by a different language, and they often are enabled to fall back on the comfort of the language they normally use. Okay, so before I leave here, this is about another method. This is the immersion program. And of course, if I'm practicing for the test, of course they're making their whole list on this sheet of paper. What we've been writing over here on the left ends up on this. And then when we look at the second page, and we're almost done, they must use problem-solving skills to communicate even when they do not have the words. So this is the second time I've seen problem solving. If I look at this, and this is what we call think alouds when we're teaching our students how to do this. You have to teach them how to do it by doing think alouds. So see how I have problem solving here? And now I have problem solving here. So that's interesting that they have it twice. So I'm going to continue reading. Once they have learned many new words, children in an immersion program can absorb grammar rules by hearing those words used a certain way over and over again. And so it's learning grammar by hearing words over and over again. In the classroom version, in the classroom version of immersion learning, everything is spoken in the new language. This includes asking to use the bathroom or talking with friends during breaks. Immersion makes the new language useful. It also gives more opportunities for children to practice their skills. So immersion equals practice skills, right? And this is the classroom, right? And this is and when they actually go to a new country. So there are two types of immersion programs, one in a country and one in the classroom. And so I'm talking my kids through this. This is what you do when a scholar reads. Strategies and abilities aside, learning a new language changes people. Okay, let's see how it changes people. In today's world, many Americans no longer have to travel internationally to be exposed to different cultures. By learning languages at a young age, kids can acquire a new way to communicate. So we have a new way to communicate. That's how it changes people. So over here, I could write changes people. And one way is it's new way, it's new ways. Is it new way to communicate? They may also increase their interest in people from different countries and cultures around the world. That's interesting because they can interest in people from different countries and cultures, right? Interest in people from different countries and cultures. Now, when I'm writing this, I'm also learning it, I'm writing it, and so it's kind of cementing, if you will, in my head, in my subconscious. Finally, language learners even develop their memory. Oh, there it is again. That's the second time we've heard about the memory and thinking skills as they learn a new technology. So we've got memory and thinking skills. And so I'm going to teach my students that the first thing they need to do is they need to write the question and the answer. And as they're going through it, they're going through the passage, they're going to summarize as they go through. Then they come over here and let's say it's just an SCR, right? The most likely reason the author wrote The Age of Language is, and that would be the topic sentence. That would just end up being the topic sentence. But what I want to do is I want to think about what I wrote, right? And so it talked about thinking skills up here quite a bit. And it also talked about, a lot of it was about that they could learn easier at a younger age. So those are the things that popped out on me, that the idea about problem solvings and memories, and how immersion, right? When I was talking about problem solving, about the immersion, right? And the other thing was the younger age, this idea about the brain of a baby, that it seemed that they really wanted to do younger is better, right? So if I had to answer one question, right, the SCR, I would want to choose between those two. And it seems, since the thesis says learning a second language at a younger age seems like a great place to start. This is what I'm teaching my students. Which one do you think is the more important? This part about being, the memory, or this part about being at a younger age. And so we can unpack both of them if we want to. And I'm just going to show you, let's pretend it was an ECR, right? Or, became an ECR of some way. So I'm going to write my concrete details. So down here, I'm going to list the concrete details. And this would be about, the topic here would be about improving thinking skills. And if it is an SCR at a younger age, right? I probably would combine them. If it were two body paragraphs, because it was an ECR, I would probably end with learning a new language is easier when taught at an early age. All right. And so that's what I learned from this. These are the two things that I learned. And if it's an SCR, I'll combine them into one. It's it improve when taught at an early, it's easier to teach a second language at a younger age, and because it improves their thinking skills, or develops thinking skills or something like that. So then what I'm going to do, and I'm looking at my time because we're always running out of time. I'm going to make a list of my favorite CDs. If I were just going to talk about improving thinking skills, I would write that I would just pull my thinking skills information and I would write improve, and it comes right off of my notes, right here, right off of here, right, that improve memory and improve problem solving skills. Something else that I learned about the thinking is, remember, it talked about the problem solving. This paragraph talked about problem solving by hearing the grammar, hearing the words. And so I like this idea about absorbing grammar, rules by hearing words. And then I'm going to leave out a little bit, over and over again. To me, those are the parts of the thinking that are important. So I come over here and I think about thinking skills, right? Improve thinking skills. Develop thinking skills. And over here, I'm going to have my words or phrases, right? Develop thinking. And I don't have to use skills again, but would develop or practice thinking, right? And so we practice thinking. That if it develops thinking skills, if it helps thinking skill, then the brain, improves, or the brain is stimulated, or brain improves, or there's growth. I'm just brainstorming. Stimulates, whatever my kids might come up with, right? It stimulates my brain. And if they don't know the word stimulates, then because I'm teaching them by doing this of thinking aloud, I'm going to say, let's look at this word stimulates. That's a really good word, a good verb for you to learn, right? That they get new learning, it's new learning, and maybe it's a higher level, higher learning, right? And I try to at least answer, fill up 4 lines. And you'll notice that I only have one that has one words. Phrases are better. And then I come down here and I'm thinking, okay, easier when taught at an early age. And so, okay, that brain, the one about a brain of a baby, that's a great one because it starts about brain of a baby is structured to learn languages. Now, do you have to do all of this? No, you do not. I'm just showing you all the ways they could come up with it. Maybe they have, um, 1 or 2. That's it. But it's better. And maybe they just have that. The most likely reason the author wrote The Age of Language is to improve thinking skills at an early age. They're going to get a point just for that, right? So let's at least get a point or 2. So the brain of a baby structured to learn languages, right? This other part was interesting to me about being younger is the part about that they form accents. See, I just go back into my notes and I say, okay, what do they do when they're young? Well, when they're young, the brain is developed to learn languages, and this idea that they form accents without using accents of the original language. I wrote that in my notes. So that was about being taught early. And then the other thing that I really liked was this idea about when they're young and they develop the pen pals, the pen pals, and friendship as youngsters. And when they're young, they have more opportunities to practice. So all of this, we've got the pen pals, they have more opportunities to practice in the immersion programs when they're young. And so I think to myself that I'm thinking about this idea that they are relationships, right? They're building relationships when they're bilingual. See, I'm just brainstorming. And I would talk it right out with the students and say, this is what I'm thinking, that when they're bilingual, they build relationships. This is the first thing I thought of. And then I thought, when they're bilingual, that they learn about um, uh, new cultures, that they are, I'm thinking about that they appreciate others' differences, right? Instead of fearing them, instead of fearing differences, right? That's what I'm thinking. That's my wiggle if you've taken our class, that's my wiggle. That's what comes to my mind, that it creates, I'm thinking, a global society. They appreciate other people's differences instead of fearing that they accept others, maybe. And that's what I think about here. So the big idea for when we're talking about the ECR, I'll just show you this. The big idea is I say to the students, you know, what is a big idea? Like what is a really big idea that you're trying to, do you think the author is getting across to us? I mean, it's like, what lesson? What do you learn about this? About what's the big idea here with if young children learn multiple languages, right? How does that help society? How does that help humans? How does that help our lives? What is a good big idea about that? I mean, does how does society improve? And that's how we are thinking about the big idea. So, what are three ideas, big ideas? And they're usually abstract nouns that you can't touch. You know, you can't touch it. It's so. What do you think? Well, Miss Lewis, you know, it makes progress. It creates progress, right? That you know, the like societies like progress or human progress or something like that, that progress can begin at an early age. And I'm talking this with my students. I'm not expecting them to know this. I've never taught them this. I'm going to teach them this is how a scholar thinks. So, what kind of progress? You know, are you talking about civilization or, yeah, civilization? Okay, so the progress of civilization, human progress, right? The people's progressing, right? What's another big idea about learning? This is all about learning a second language. Well, what about Miss Lewis? What about knowledge? See, I'm talking to I'm doing the same thing with my students that I'm doing with you. I'm talking through it. I'm talking through it. Okay, what do you think about knowledge? Well, I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking, and this is me. This doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just this is how what the lessons I'm thinking about is the more knowledge we have, the more open minded we are or we become to others, toward others. That's what I'm thinking because they talked about friendship and learning different cultures and learning about different countries. And then the other thing, maybe I think for me, I'm thinking acceptance is a big idea. That accepting other people's differences can help society or can help the world. Right? And so I'm going to teach my students to think through this. And we're going to practice and practice and practice. And then what we're going to do if we were going to perhaps write uh, an SCR, an SCR, and of course, I'd love to be able to write this thing out right now with you in writing, because what I would do is I would have them go to this page. This is a page we have, and I would have them for an ECR, they would have to write one sentence and their thesis, and then they would write a topic sentence and they check it off as they go, right? And so for their first, for their introduction, for their first sentence in their introduction, what I'm going to have them do is to maybe, if we're doing an ECR, I would have them maybe pull this for their intro. That's the first sentence of their intro. And what I would do is this would be their conclusion. This would be a one sentence conclusion. I'd end my piece on the STAAR test with only a one sentence conclusion. I'd pick this for my conclusion, and I'd pick this for my introduction. Now, if this were an ECR up here, right, I would talk about the most likely reason the author wrote The Age of Language is to improve thinking skills, and or the most likely reason the author wrote The Age of Language is to show that it's easier when taught at an early age and it improves thinking skills. That would be my introduction. So let me share with you. I'm going to just come up here because I don't have time to write it out with you. So I'm going to come over here and I'll make this bigger so that you can see it. So if it's an ECR, for example, I'm sorry, if it is an SCR, if it's an SCR, I'm going to write learning a new language is easier when taught at a younger age. And I'll send this to you if you'd like. And that's, of course, blue because it's my topic sentence, right? And then the brain of a baby is structured to learn languages. That's going to be my concrete detail. And where did I get that? I got it right here. And I tell the students, when you use it, you lose it. So we're going to use this. So cross it out. Okay? And then I say, they have the ability to form accents without using the accents of the original language. That came from the text also. And then also learning at a younger age with pen pals and immersion programs gives more opportunity for children to practice their skills. All of this is concrete detail. And where did that come from? Right here, right here, and right here. Now I need to have a little bit more because I'm going to teach my students to write commentary even on the SCRs, because what I want them to do is to practice for the ECRs. So I'm going to ask that they actually use, in their SCRs, I'm going to require of my students that they put commentary because I think they'll get more points. When children learn about new languages, they learn about new cultures and appreciate differences between people instead of fearing differences. Right? Right there. That is a green commentary. And where did I get that? We've got new cultures, differences, and fearing differences. Where did I get that? Right here. When you use it, you lose it. This is called pick and stitch, right? We've got new cultures, new cultures, appreciate others' differences instead of fearing differences, right? That's what I did right there. And then, watch this. Hold on, you can see this. See? New new cultures appreciate others' differences instead of fearing differences, right? And now I need my concluding sentence. And I'm going to pull for my concluding sentence, I'm going to use bilingual. I'm going to talk about making friends, right? That I can pull from here, but I'm going to put it over here, friends, because I put build relationships, or I could say they will build relationships instead of friends, because I don't want to use friends because it's in the text. And so remember, my commentary can't have what's in the text. And so I'm going to come over here. I'm looking at the time so I can get y'all out here on time. So if you look at here, I'm writing right here. This is blue concluding sentence. If we teach children at a younger age to become bilingual, they will build relationships from other cultures and help to make our global society more accepting of others. You see? And all of that came right here, where I say bilingual, accept others, global society, build relationships. So I pick and stitch and put it into sentences. And I'm going to teach my students, and I don't have to have this big. I mean, they're sixth graders, for goodness sakes. I can have shorter sentences, right? But I'm just showing you how you can pick and stitch and teach them how to combine. Now, I want to show you one more quick thing. I'm going to show you one more quick thing. If this were an ECR and I were going to create this whole thing as an ECR, then this would be probably another reason, or the most important reason the author wrote the piece, right? If it asks for what are the reasons the author wrote the piece. And then maybe I'm going to teach them up here. We're going to pick and stitch together the idea about thinking skills. But what I want to show you is for my introduction, remember I'm going to indent, and I'm going to write something like human progress can begin at an early age. That was one of my big ideas. And then I'm going to add the thesis, right? Let's say it said reasons, right? The most likely reasons that the author wrote The Age of Language and I can do past tense, were, because it said wrote in the prompt, were, right? To improve thinking skills um, at children with children at younger ages. And that's going to be my introduction and thesis. And then down here for my conclusion, if this were going to be, right, we're going to, if it's an essay, we have to indent. I'm going to end with accepting other people's differences can help the world, and languages, learning multiple languages at an early age is a good way to do this. Something like that. And all of this, I got from the summarizing and working on my pre-writing. And so I've got an SCR if I want one, I've got an ECR if I want one. And so now I'm going to quickly ask you, I know it's time to go, but I'm going to quickly ask, and I'm going to put an evaluation in the chat, but what questions do you have? And what was a takeaway? I want you to unmute yourself and I want you to give me one takeaway, please. Something that you think that you can use in your classroom, or just in general, what you learned from today's 75-minute PD.
Mary Brown.
The big ideas, using them both as the introduction and the conclusion. I'd kind of forgotten that this last week, that I was most thinking of that towards the using those things in the conclusion only. Super helpful when students are stuck on their controlling idea, their thesis, to use those controlling ideas as an introduction. So that's my takeaway. I hope that made sense.
Yes, it does. It does, Amy. And Mary, what were you going to say?
I was going to say my biggest takeaway is not only extending the SCR using the same format for the ECR, but also the way you use the commentaries and you put the words in there to help stimulate that thought process of how they're going to use the commentary without text evidence. So that's very powerful right there for them, because they struggle with that commentary piece.
Well, they do. And you know what happens so much of the time is that they end up just repeating the concrete detail. They just paraphrase the darn concrete detail, and it makes me crazy. And I say to them, why is that important? Why is that an important part of, why did you, out of all the concrete detail that you could have chosen, why did you choose that one? Tell me why that's important. Don't just repeat it. Tell me why. So you're exactly right, Mary. It is so tough. The commentary is so tough. And if you teach them over there on the CM, why is this important? What comes to your mind? But Mary, you have to do it for them a few times so that they can see how a scholar thinks. What was I thinking? I was thinking then. You have to think aloud and actually have them do that. So good. That's great. That's great. And Christina, what were you thinking?
I would say I like just the simple once you use it, you lose it. Where I notice the students are struggling is like they gather all of their details, but then when it actually comes to drafting the writing, they're still kind of confused as to how to pull the details from my gathering phase into actually drafting phase. So that was really beneficial just to see your thought process on exactly where you got that from and how to help them begin drafting once they've done the pre-writing.
That's why I don't think that they can do it on the test, online. They can't do this online. They have to be able to have a system, have a template of pre-writing, and it takes practice, and you know that. This will take practice, but it's January. And if they practice, 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 and you just work through it, the other thing you can do with your curriculum with Amplify, for example, or HMH, whatever curriculum you're using. I know Fort Worth is using Amplify. When you are doing an actual reading with them, if you come up with like a STAAR question right at the beginning, we're going to read this, and I'm going to give you the purpose for reading, and it could be like a STAAR question. Then what y'all could do is y'all could go ahead and everybody could create the sheet by folding it, right? What's the question? What would be the answer? And as you're reading the piece, you put concrete details in it and you have your really good discussion. You know how you sometimes you have these great discussion with the students? So you put the evidence there and then you say, well, why is that important? Why what is important about that? And so then, but you're scribing their answers because a lot of times they don't think that I don't know, I don't know what to think. Yeah, you do. It's there. Let me just help you pull it out. It's there, and you have to praise them that, wow, that's a really good green juice. That's good green stuff right there that you would put in your commentary. Michaela, what are you thinking?
It's Michaela.
Michaela?
So for me, the exciting part was the pre-writing sheet, just being able to actually get their minds trained in the format of writing so that when we get to the day of STAR, even though that paper is blank, they'll know what to actually do with that paper. And just getting them used to, putting things in the sections that they go, and so that they can put that graphic organizer together into a
Yep.
piece of writing. So kind of just letting it watch it unfold, but they know the formula. So it's just creating and teaching them the formula so they can be successful. So that was when you did the pre-writing sheet, that was the one for me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Good, good, good. Because they don't know how to start. And they're like, well, and don't forget, Michaela, and you don't forget this, I know, don't forget though that it's a cold read to them. It's a cold read, and that is scary. That's scary for any test taker. What if they threw an Emily Dickinson poem at me? I'd be like, oh, please don't throw an Emily Dickinson poem at me, right? It's like, I don't know if I'm going to know what to write. But when they have this process where they start folding and they put the Q&A and they write that out, what happens is their nerves kind of get a little bit settled. They can kind of start thinking about it. And then when they summarize and put the bullets of the evidence, then they know, okay, these would be my concrete details. So I just hope that helps you. And of course, the next time we're going to meet is, gosh, I can't remember, but the registration link is up. I want to say it's not next week, but I think it's in a couple of weeks, and we're going to do argumentation. But we're going to use the same form. The only thing different for the argumentation is with eighth graders, they have to, seventh and eighth graders have to use the counter argument. So, we'll talk about that, but we'll do argumentation next time. And oh, it says it February 4th, Amy? Yeah. Um, we'll do argumentation that, and then we'll end with the literary, where we take a poem and go through that. Next time we'll do seventh grade for argumentation or eighth, and then we'll also do we'll do sixth, seventh, and eighth. This was sixth grade, and so next time we'll do seventh or eighth, and then the final time we'll do seventh or eighth. So all three grade levels are covered. Okay. I'm sorry I kept y'all over, but I hope it was beneficial. And the evaluation is Vanessa put the evaluation right above the registration link. And so if you will fill out the evaluation, I'll read it and you tell me what else you need, and I'll include that in our next trainings, okay? See you later. Y'all stay warm.
Thank
Take
you.
care. All right, bye-bye. Thank you, Mary.